Check out today's work of fan art. It's a fan-servant design of George Washington. Obviously, if we can have Edison, we can have an actual president. He's listed as an archer, and yet he's carrying a sword. For fate, that's pretty much spot on. Thank you, Zachary Ortiz. Welcome back to Otaku Daikun. Dai here. Today's video is one I've wanted to make for a while, and some of you have even requested it. Shiro Emiya, our self-sacrificing goody two-shoes with a sword fetish, often describes that he wants to become a hero of justice. This desire came from being inspired by his adoptive father Kiritsugu, and realized in a future where he becomes heroic spirit Emiya. That said, what exactly is a hero of justice? What does it mean to Shiro, Kiritsugu, or Archer? In this video, I'll be looking into the philosophical outlook each of these characters has regarding justice, and hopefully gathering some insights we can all learn from. In order to understand what a hero of justice is, we need to clarify what justice even is. Thankfully, that part's easy. Justice is basically another term for a sense of moral righteousness, a philosophy on what is right and what is wrong. Statements like "thou shalt not kill" or "treat others how you wish to be treated" are some examples of morality that we can choose to adopt, either based upon a religious pretext or a general desire to make people happy. Still, we as humans do not all agree on what actions are benevolent or malicious. As such, different philosophies can sometimes clash with one another. Typically, people talk about morality from a presumed state of altruism, a selfless desire to do the right thing and benefit the lives of others. But even the most humble of intentions can go awry. We often think of heroes as soldiers who fight to defeat evil, beating up or otherwise eliminating bad guys in order to save the innocent. However, reality is not always so clear-cut, and I think Fate does a fantastic job of exploring this harsh reality. Before we get to Shiro, it's best to talk about his inspiration, Kiritsugu. Jaded over years of being an assassin, he likely wouldn't agree to being called a hero of justice. In fact, he condemned heroes in general, because they often glorified conflict and battle. Regardless, in his youth, he definitely strove to be a hero, caring more about humanity than most, with a stern desire to save humanity through world peace. That's why he fought in the Fourth Holy Grail War, hoping that the Grail could grant him a miracle. After all, he saw no means of achieving world peace without the Grail's power. He'd tried to do his best through practical means, but he ultimately resigned himself to the idea that it was impossible to save everyone. In that regard, the Grail was his last hope. Practically speaking, Kiritsugu is a textbook example of someone who follows utilitarian morality. Basically, it's a moral philosophy that declares the ends justify the means when actions are taken for the greater good. In this case, the greater good refers to the needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few. Unlike other moral philosophies, utilitarianism does not forbid any one behavior, instead dealing with the intentions and consequences of a given behavior. Under this belief, killing itself is not inherently evil. If killing one person can potentially save thousands, it seems like a legitimate trade-off. Most heroes ascribe to at least part of this outlook, defeating villains who actively harm others in order to keep evil off the streets. Kiritsugu's entire career as an assassin was founded on this idea when he killed his own father. His dad's magecraft experiments led to the destruction of an entire village, taking the lives of his friends and loved ones. When his dad wrote the tragedy off as just another failed experiment and planned to continue his research elsewhere, Kiritsugu shot his father in order to prevent such tragedies from happening again. He saw a greater good, a net positive of human happiness, in killing his father. Under Natalia, his new mentor, Kiritsugu went on to hunt down other dangerous magi as a freelance assassin. Growing up doing this solidified his belief that he later tells to Shiro on his last night alive, that it's impossible to save everyone. To save one life means not being able to save another. He truly resigns himself to this belief when he chooses to kill Natalia after a mission gone wrong. Their target was a mage cultivating demonic bees, and in eliminating their target, Natalia accidentally unleashed a swarm of these bees throughout an airplane. While Natalia successfully took refuge in the plane's cockpit, the bees were still swarming the other passengers, who were turned into ghouls by the bees' poison. There was a chance Natalia could land the plane and escape, but doing so carried the risk of letting those nasty bees and ghouls infect a wider area. As a matter of utility, Kiritsugu reasoned that Natalia's life was not worth the lives of all the people whom the bees could still infect, and so he took the safest route by blowing up the airplane from the ocean. This was a horribly painful situation, a point of no return as it were. Moving forward, he would sacrifice anything and anyone important to him if it meant saving more lives than would be lost. This included any hollow notions of honor, as well as the lives of his assistant Maya and even his wife Irisfeel. No matter how much it hurt him, it would be a small price to pay for the entire world to find peace. The notion of justice through sacrifice for the sake of the greater good is both explained and criticized through a philosophical thought experiment called the trolley problem. Imagine there's a train speeding down its tracks and is about to hit a junction where it can go in either one of two directions. Also imagine that on each of these divergent tracks, people have been tied down to the railway, such that they will be run over by any passing trains. Lastly, imagine you arrive at the scene, but lack the time needed to either stop the train or free the people on the tracks. The only thing you can do is adjust the lever that determines which direction the train will go. In other words, the only thing you can do is choose which group of people on the tracks lives and which group dies. As I've already mentioned, utilitarian morality seems to indicate that we should choose to save the group with the most people. And without further context, this is a rational decision to make. However, adding details can quickly show how complicated this decision can be. For instance, what if the larger group were grown men, and the smaller group were women and children? One can certainly argue that saving the women and children, though they are fewer in number, would result in more happiness overall, because children have more years ahead of them to live, and women can create even more life. What if we had to choose between a group of the elderly and a group of babies? Again, one can argue the babies have longer to live, leading to an increase in overall happiness. While this might be true from a probability standpoint, there's no guarantee. For all we know, the babies might all have terminal illnesses, while the seniors are all extremely healthy. Perhaps the seniors each have 10 years left, while the babies won't even last for a few weeks. As we continue to tweak the trolley problem, some substantial flaws of utilitarian morality begin to emerge. For one, the greater good is subjective. We have no objective means of measuring people's happiness, and even if we did, there's no guarantee our actions will actually contribute to that happiness. It's not like we can test each outcome in situations like this. What we imagine to be the greater good might not be, and even if it is, our actions might not bring about that outcome. Kiritsugu acknowledged these faults in utilitarianism, which is what made the Grail so appealing. He couldn't even imagine a world without conflict. He wanted it, even though he didn't know what it looked like. With the Grail's miracle, however, he believed he didn't need to know in order to make it happen. Thus, he put everything dear to him on the line to win the Grail, only to find out that it actually couldn't grant his wish. It had been corrupted by Angra Mainyu, such that it only ever answered evil wishes, or answered good ones through evil methods that defeat the point. Kiritsugu's attempt to save the entire world instead resulted in a fire that killed 500 people. Of course, this fire wasn't Kiritsugu's fault. Kirei's wish had a lot to do with the fire, and we can only imagine how much more destruction would have come had Kirei or perhaps Ryunosuke officially claimed the Grail instead. Regardless, Kiritsugu's inability to foresee the tragedy broke him. Desperately trying to save anyone at all, Kiritsugu wandered through the flames and rescued Shiro. As 500 other people died around him, Kiritsugu was overjoyed to save even a single person in need. Still, having failed so disastrously in the Grail War completely stole his ambition to be a hero at all. Before we move on, I want to mention that Kiritsugu, when encountering Angra Mainyu, was forced to participate in a very similar thought experiment to the trolley problem. It stated that there were two boats, carrying 300 and 200 passengers respectively. Both boats sprang holes and began to sink, but Kiritsugu could only repair one ship, leaving the other to die. He naturally chose to save the boat with 300 passengers. Even if the boat with 200 passengers were to try and force him to fix their boat, he would kill them all for the chance to save the larger group. To taunt him further, after making this first decision, he is given another scenario in which the 300 survivors split themselves between two other boats and encountered the exact same dilemma in which he could only save one. This forced him to choose between a group of 200 and a group of 100 people. Naturally, as Kiritsugu continued to save the larger groups, he noticed that, in the long run, he had killed more people than he ultimately saved. This is meant to show the futility of his utilitarian morality. If you continue to sacrifice for the greater good becomes smaller and smaller. Even if each sacrifice is small, the more you do it, those casualties add up. Personally, I feel this is incredibly unfair to Kiritsugu. Even as he's condemned for his decisions and philosophy, he is never presented with a superior alternative. If he chose to save the smaller group, for instance, there was no guarantee they wouldn't split off and repeat the dilemma too. He's not omniscient, so he made the best choice he could, and presumably without his help, they would have all died. Thus, even if fate is cruel, and your efforts help wind up causing tragedy instead, that doesn't mean trying to help with the best of intentions is pointless. What this thought experiment does illustrate, however, is that choosing to be the hero can be incredibly burdensome and painful. That's where Archer comes in. In Kiritsugu's final moments, his son Shiro vows to become a hero of justice in his stead. Unlike his father, however, Shiro is naive. It's almost like he has no inherent philosophy at all. At first, his actions are motivated by three things: his envy for Kiritsugu, his genuine altruism, and his survivor's guilt. Even though Kiritsugu saved him from the fire, Shiro felt that Kiritsugu had been saved through the act of saving another. Shiro admired the pleasure and relief on his father's face, and aspired to be like the man he saw that night. As such, the act of helping people genuinely seems to make him happy. It's not that he doesn't care for his own well-being at all, he just derives his own happiness from that of others. As a survivor of the Fuyuki fire, he repays his good fortune through service. If he dies trying to protect somebody else, well, he already owed a debt for surviving so long to begin with. Thus, when Shiro found out that the fire was caused by the previous Grail War, he decided to fight so that such tragedies would never happen again. He fought through a version of the Fifth Grail War that we never explicitly see. Then, as expected, he goes on to be a traveling mercenary of sorts. His naive desire to save everyone hit a roadblock at this point. Without strength, he couldn't save anyone, let alone the majority. In pursuit of that strength, he made a deal with the world to become a counter-guardian, to fight on the planet's behalf to steer humanity from catastrophe. In a sense, he sold his very soul to be the hero he always dreamed of. At this point, I'll just call him Archer. As a heroic spirit, Archer was forced to endure the same harsh reality that Kiritsugu faced, that saving lives meant not being able to save others. He was sent to various points across history, tasked with killing people deemed a threat to the human race. Even the planet's will was adopting a utilitarian perspective, so he killed and killed and killed. And while he certainly saved more people than he killed, from his perspective he was just a murderer, the planet's janitor made to clean up after humanity's messes, leaving a pile of corpses in his wake. He wasn't the kind of hero he wanted to be, one who could save without sacrifice, and yet he was indeed a hero in the most practical sense possible. Again, his past self was naive. Wanting to become like Kiritsugu meant becoming someone like Archer all along. It wasn't going to be an easy path. In the end, however, Archer had forgotten why he wanted to be a hero in the first place, and grew weary of his existence as a counter-guardian. He wanted out of the deal, and sought to make this happen by getting summoned back into the Fifth Grail War. As a participant, he would kill his former self, hoping to create a time paradox that would erase him from the throne of heroes. Both Archer and Kiritsugu grew up learning that a hero was someone who sacrificed the few for the sake of the many. Yet, they both sought means of overcoming this harsh truth. For Kiritsugu, it was the Grail, and for Archer, it was becoming a counter-guardian. Sadly, both methods proved futile. There was no miracle cure to make everyone happy without sacrifice, to save everyone regardless of good or evil. They both ultimately abandoned their aspirations, leaving us with only one more subject: the young Shiro, who had yet to make any sacrifices of his own, who wanted to be a hero before experiencing the harshness of reality. His outcome changes depending on whichever plot route you play, but in all three, we see Shiro as a selfless altruist who, instead of sacrificing others, will sacrifice himself to save people. He's only able to survive with this suicidal altruism because of Rin Tosaka's magic and Saber's Avalon. Throughout the war, Archer observes Shiro, and various circumstances influence his decision to go for the kill or not. In the Fate route, Archer is injured early on, preventing him from taking action against Shiro. His greatest fear is that Shiro will continue on in life to be just like him, but this doesn't happen thanks to Shiro's growing love for Artoria. Sure, Shiro still wants to be a hero of justice, but he also aspires to eventually reunite with Artoria. It's likely that Archer sees this passion, and believes that having such a long-term goal will keep Shiro from regretting his decisions. Her desire to sacrifice herself for the sake of her kingdom conflicts with his sense of chivalry, and the both of them realize how little they value their own lives. On Shiro's end, this makes him a very different person than the archer who regretted becoming a hero. In Unlimited Blade Works, this is not the case. In fact, Shiro becomes inspired by Archer's fighting techniques and doubles down on his heroics. If anything, it looks like Shiro will become just like Archer even faster than before. Because of this, Archer actively aims to kill Shiro, irritated by his naivete. When the two ultimately fight each other, Shiro's optimism is able to remind Archer of his motivation for becoming a hero. Archer learns that while his ideas are naive, they aren't wrong. Even if being a real hero is a matter of constantly killing evildoers, it's still worth doing because of how inspiring heroes can be, and how much joy they can bring to both themselves and the people they save. Naturally, Shiro, being warned about a Counter Guardian's job well in advance this time, will not lose sight of his own inspiration. Presumably, the heroic spirit Emiya Archer we meet in Fate Grand Order is more akin to this enlightened Shiro. By far the most contrasting arc is Heaven's Feel. Shiro is pressured to make a harrowing sacrifice early on. Not only is he asked to sacrifice one for the sake of many, but that one just so happens to be his beloved Kohai Sakura. It's a stark reminder that it's not always a matter of killing evil for the sake of good, that being evil isn't necessarily something people seek to do. Sakura, due to factors well beyond her control, is a victim whose reasonable teenage desires for love and acceptance are twisted by the Grail's corruption. The easiest answer to save the most lives possible seems to be killing Sakura and putting her out of her misery. Suddenly, Shiro's desire to save the woman he loves is at odds with what he's been told a hero must do. Thus, instead of being a hero to the world, he chooses to be a hero to Sakura. Archer notices this and is once again no longer worried about history repeating itself. He willingly sacrifices himself so that Shiro can forge a new path. Between these various narratives, fate never tells us which answer is correct, because in truth there is no ideal solution, but I feel there are some things we can take away from this anime. First and foremost, being a hero is a matter of bringing happiness to those who are saved. If a hero can remember their own joy in saving others, they'll be able to endure the tough decisions that come from the pursuit. After all, we're not omniscient. We can never guarantee an ideal outcome, but we can push forward with the right intentions and find beauty at the end of that path. Thankfully, life isn't always presented like it is in thought experiments. Sometimes we can save both ships, or at the very least, prevent survivors from going off and getting themselves into further danger. In cases like the trolley problem, we can perhaps track down the sick bastards going around tying people to train tracks in the first place. As for Heaven's Feel, it's unfair to place the entire world on Shiro's shoulders to kill Sakura when their entire dilemma was caused by several actions going unpunished years before he was even born. Heck, not even all of these prior causes were evil either. When the Greater Grail system was made, its creators genuinely believed that gaining the magic of Heaven's Feel once more would help humanity. Philosophy is typically a process of seeking a solution to a problem that perhaps simply cannot be solved. However, in seeking that solution, despite its futility, we hope to gain a better understanding of ourselves and the world around us. After all, it's the people who know the most who are best prepared to admit what they don't know. With that, I take the conversation to you all. What morals do you follow, and why? What do you think makes someone a hero? Is it wrong to be a hero who makes sacrifices for the greater good? Is Shiro just a childish hypocrite? Please let me know all of your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, help me beat the algorithm by liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to Otaku Daikun, and, most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of my anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content. If you want to support me directly, there are now 3 ways that all provide the same benefits. You can click join here on YouTube, or join Patreon or Subscribestar for access to exclusive vids and early access. As always, celebrate your fandom.